Hey there, Chipmunks! Welcome to the AMP Cycling Ride Review Series. I'm your host, Angry Chipmunk, and today we're back in Italy, taking on the Gaiole route in Tuscany. This route is available on Rouvy, so let's get right to it. This is a moderate length route at just over 33 kilometers, but with a decent amount of elevation gain at 700 meters. The whole ride averages just 2% and will max out at 11%. There are only 2 Strava segments included on Rouvy, but there are 11 on Strava itself. They are a mix of partial hill to full hill segments and even one downhill segment. This is a pretty difficult route for determining exactly what is a segment, as it is very hilly. I would say there are 3 main hills with a few more smaller ones scattered throughout. Now, the first Strava segment is Laaa Hill. It's at the 2.3 kilometer mark, is 3.4 kilometers long with 143 meters of elevation gain, averaging 4.2% and peaking at 8.5%. Strava considers this one to be a Cat 4 climb. Annoyingly, this is one of those segments that starts about 1 kilometer after the climbing actually starts, and there's about 63 meters of elevation gain in that 1 kilometer. The segment itself is very similar to the bit before it and all of the rest of it. There's not heaps of steep section, but lots of mild ups and downs, and this is somewhat of a sandwich style climb, with the middle section being quite mellow by comparison. There's nothing overly complex about this climb. Its biggest challenge is how early on in the ride you encounter it. A steady pace suits this one, but if you want to push pretty hard, there's a nice long flattish section that just follows it. The flat does have a few small hills along the way, but you travel along at such a quick pace that they will hardly even register or slow you down. There is a very long and fast downhill section, which also has small hills in it, and they are even less noticeable as you are traveling much faster. The peak gradient appears shortly after the end of the downhill in a random turnoff that the camera car takes. There's nothing really around to suggest that it would be so steep, so just watch carefully for the dark orange. It is in a spot where you're still traveling pretty quickly, so it shouldn't really slow anyone down all that much. Now, the second hill of note is a Strava-only segment. It is Radda in Chianti 2. It's at the 20 kilometer mark, is 2.3 kilometers long, with 125 meters of elevation gain, averaging 5.3% and peaking at 10%. Strava considers to be a Cat 4 climb. This climb is pretty consistent, with most of it around that 5 to 7% range. It does back off slightly towards the end before one last little kick. There's not much before it that makes it more challenging, so easy enough to power up this one. There's also a nice bit of downhill following it to rest before the final ascent. And the last hill is Laaa Hill. It's at the 25 kilometer mark, is 2.2 kilometers long, with 99 meters of elevation gain, averaging 4.4% and peaking at 7.5%. Strava considers this one to be a Cat 4 climb as well. This is a bit of a mixed bag of a climb, with the second half of it really backing off quite a bit in spots. Again, it's a nice climb for just a steady pace, but with the downhills preceding and following it, you can definitely make a decent push on this one without breaking the legs. From the end of the segment to the end of the route is almost all downhill. There's a couple of small blips of uphill where you'll see a max of about 8%. But if you're traveling as quickly as Rouvy allows, you'll hardly even notice them, and the downhill leads to the end of the route. For this ride, I would suggest a decent warm-up, as the first hills come pretty quickly into it. I'd say at least 10 minutes here. They aren't super steep climbs, but enough that you'll be needing a pretty good warm-up. And you can get away with a lesser cooldown, as the last 5 kilometers are very mild, and the last 2 kilometers will see you hit Rouvy max speed without much effort at all. And as always, I recommend pre-fueling your rides and including plenty of protein with that. And with the climbing coming so early on in this one, it's especially important to have fuel on board. If you can't pre-fuel, have 15 grams while you're warming up so it has a chance to help with the first climb. The first downhill section in the middle is a great place to have another 15 to 20 grams. That should see you pretty good to the end of the ride. But be careful not to overfuel this one, as it's not very long. But at 700 meters of climbing, I would definitely follow this one up with a protein and a magnesium supplement. The views on this ride are amazing as always. Tuscany is a very beautiful area and the time of year was perfect here. Everything is a super rich green with bright blue skies. There's a decent mix of tarmac and the Strade Bianche, which of course adds to the enjoyment. There's villas, vineyards, and towns offer a great immersive experience. There's a bit of other traffic along the roads, but not so much as to be overly distracting. And the great part about doing this ride on Rouvy is you don't need to worry about getting all of that dust in your nose and eyes. And I tried to push the pace a bit on this one and completed the ride in just under 1.5 hours on 100% difficulty emulation. I would say to budget anywhere with needing 1 to 2 hours here. If you're pretty quick, it could fill a moderate time gap. There's a few spots where you could stop and pick up the ride again later if you needed to as well. Overall, this is a fantastic route that I would definitely recommend for the intermediate level rider and up. It's got plenty of ups and downhills to keep things interesting, and the scenery will not disappoint. The medium amount of elevation gain is perfect for those who are wanting to up their gains without it being an overwhelming mountain pass. I really enjoy routes like this for the moderate amount of everything on offer. Moderate distance, moderate elevation, and moderate time needed. With so many fast downhills in it, I would definitely recommend pre-downloading this one so you don't outrun the buffering. For this route, I give a 5 out of 5. Really great mix of surfaces with a lot of gravel, and there's not too much traffic, but also has a nice mix of towns and countryside. For the climbs, 2 out of 5, 2.5 out of 5, and 2 out of 5. None are overly difficult here. The mix of steeper and shallower gradients makes them all pretty doable and suitable for pushing pretty hard if you want to, and as mentioned, really good for those wanting to up their elevation gains before hitting up the likes of Stelvio. For the view, 5 out of 5. Zero to complain about here. Everything is just as you see it in the races, and it does not disappoint. And overall, 5 out of 5. Definitely put this one in your ride queue. Perfect for all of the reasons mentioned, plus it's just a great ride, as you can see from the large peloton stopped for coffee in one of the little villages. Well, that's it for this review, so thanks for watching, chipmunks. Let me know what you think of the Gaiole route in Tuscany if you complete it. I'll leave you to finish the rest of the ride, and I'll see you in 2 weeks for another review. Until then, ride on, chipmunks, ride on.